Episode 1 of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window begins with Anna making a casserole and immediately dropping it on the floor when she experiences strange visions. With frozen peas on her hands, Anna reflects on her overactive imagination, complete with a quirky British accent which she immediately ditches. Anna drops off her daughter Elizabeth at school, but does so in a dressing gown. However, we soon come to find out that Elizabeth is actually dead. It's been 3 years since her husband left, and Carol, one of the mums from school, decides to set Anna up on a date with a guy called Mark. While she mulls this over, Anna heads home and starts preparing for her big night by drinking copious amounts of red wine. While she gets ready, the camera pans over to show several beautiful paintings on the wall. It turns out Anna is a talented painter, but since Elizabeth's death, she's been unable to pick up a paintbrush again. Anna's life soon changes though when new neighbors moving in across the street. A handsome single dad called Neil and his daughter Emma are now her new neighbors. As she introduces herself, Anna quickly learns that Neil's partner died up at the lake house, where she drowned. Interestingly, Anna's book that she's reading is called The Woman Across the Lake. Anna's attempts to bring over a casserole go completely awry when it starts raining. Anna collapses in the road, as we learn she actually has ombrophobia, which is a fear of the rain. Neil helps her back into her house and encourages Anna to start painting again. The pair continue to get along well, with Anna even heading over for dinner after making another casserole dish. There's no breakages yet, although after dinner when they touch hands, the dish does smash. All is looking up for Anna, but is it too good to be true? Episode 2 of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window starts with Anna heading up to the attic and looking over all her old art supplies. Her end goal here is a light green pen, which she intends to bring over to Emma. Of course, that's only so she has an excuse to chat to Neil again and pick up where they left off the night before. En route to his front door though, she ends up walking parallel to an air hostess called Lisa, Neil's girlfriend. As Neil embraces her and the pair have a happy family hug with Emma, Anna slips back home again. Naturally, she's out of wine, so she heads to the supermarket to pick more up. Hiding round the corner, she hears Carol there gossiping about her. She mentions Anna's drinking problem and goes on to reveal Neil's current relationship and how Anna is throwing herself at him. This causes a good deal of stress on top of Anna's current levels. On top of imagining running over Lisa, who throws away Anna's markers because they smell funny, she starts talking to her therapist about how she's feeling. Now, it turns out a lot of the issues with Elizabeth stem from Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, where Douglas, her partner at the time, worked as an FBI forensic examiner. His specific field was working with mass murderers, including a nasty guy called Massacre Mike whom Elizabeth was left in the room alone with. Given what's going on across the street, Anna finds herself obsessing over Lisa and finding out exactly who she is. She begins looking through her social media feed and finds someone called Sexy Rizai liking all of her photos with fire and eggplant images. Anna is determined to find out what this all means, so she signs up on Instagram using the name VeraSexyAnna. All of this is a ruse to get Rizai on board and liking her friend request, which works an absolute charm. Anna begins searching through his photos and stumbles upon one involving Rizai sitting with Lisa, who happens to be kissing his neck. Alas, the plot thickens. That night, Anna looks out the window and notices Lisa clutching her neck in pain. Blood-soaked, she collapses on the floor. Anna immediately rings the police, but thanks to her rain phobia, she's not able to reach the house before she passes out on the floor outside. Episode 3 of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window begins with Anna being brought in from the rain by a mysterious figure. We are led to believe it's Neil, but it's not 100% confirmed. When the rain stops and Anna awakens, the police are outside waiting for her. Both Detective Lane and Officer Walters want to take a statement from her. As Anna starts talking about the murder, they reveal that Lisa isn't actually dead. There's no trace of her murder in Neil's house, and as far as they're aware, she's flown out to Seattle. Anna tries to explain her reasoning, but it's no good, it falls on deaf ears. The police don't write her up for a false report though, but encourage her to try and make it up to Neil the following day. In the morning, Anna decides to prove her theory right. She heads over to Neil's house and immediately sees text messages exchanged between him and Lisa, timed for 9:48 p.m. Given this is after the time she was supposed to have left, it starts to make sense. Neil goes on to explain how the police arriving really spooked Emma and encourages Anna to stop snooping around. Well, Anna decides to break in, where she finds Lisa's earring by the window. Unfortunately, she's caught red-handed by Neil and Emma, who return home. Realizing she needs to get help, Anna decides to head off on a grief retreat for the weekend. When she shows up at the airport, Anna notices an advertisement for Olympia Airlines preparing to fly west. Only, that means they're not currently flying there now. That's a problem because Lisa works for Olympia, and if they're not going to Seattle, it throws her alibi out the window. So naturally, Anna heads to the police station and tries to explain this to Detective Lane. Interestingly, Lane actually used to be one of the officers in charge of the Massacre Mike case and shows empathy toward Anna's plight. It's also revealed here that Mike killed and ate Anna's daughter, which is where her grief and trauma has really stemmed from. Lane takes pity on her and suggests Anna head home instead. Only, when Anna steps outside the station, she notices someone has scrawled "Stop her" next on her car. This incentivizes Anna to double down on investigating. She uses Douglas's contacts, posing as his assistant, to get background checks done on Lisa and Rex. Anna also turns her attention to Neil too, and specifically his involvement with Meredith Coleman. Searching online, Anna learns that he was a suspect in her death, which occurred up at the lake house. Could it be that Neil has murdered Lisa and also Meredith too? Episode 4 of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window begins with the focus shifting across to the past. And specifically what happened at the lake. Meredith is worried about Emma swimming on her own. Neil is not happy, and there are clear marital issues between the two. Neil loses his temper and curses at her. Meredith admits he has a bad temper, but he loses control and pushes her into the lake where she drowns, or does she? Anna awakens with a start as we realize all of this was just one big vision. However, she remains determined to figure out the truth, more determined than ever to expose Neil's perceived sinister deeds. Anna's investigation leads her to Hilary Lathan, Meredith's sister. She happens to be a resident of Middlebury, giving Anna a clear path to discovering more about her. Using social media, she finds her address and heads over, casserole in hand. It turns out Hilary was convinced Neil was cheating on Meredith. The thing is, there was a second tragedy after the initial one, that involving Emma's teacher at school. She fell during a class field trip to the lighthouse, and Neil was the chaperone on that fateful school trip too. Heading back in town, Anna notices Neil taking an ominous-looking bag out and decides to tail him. Neil is wise to what she's doing though, and calls her out for snooping. Anna starts to slip but presses on, questioning his scar. This is something we saw back in episode 1, and now we get some context for it. It turns out the scar across his stomach was actually from when he donated a kidney to his brother, but it didn't take. It's a painful memory for Neil to relive, and he's visibly uncomfortable by Anna's persistent questioning. In order to fully prove his theory though, Anna urges him to let her look in the bag. And inside happens to be a ventriloquist dummy. This creepy little thing is what Neil took to in order to help him through the grief following Meredith's passing. He moonlights as a ventriloquist act. On the way home, Anna receives the results from her background checks. Nothing came up on Lisa, but for Rex, his rap sheet goes back a fair while. Only, we don't see how far as Rex himself shows up behind Anna and forces her inside the house. Episode 5 of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window starts with Rex bringing Anna inside her house and holding her captive. Anna pretends that Douglas will return home soon, prompting Rex to force Anna to message Douglas to prove as much. He watches their text messages as Anna asks him to get her some bread. After a bit of back and forth, he eventually agrees to do just that. The thing is, Rex believes that Anna is working with Lisa, who he knows as Chastity. As things begin escalating, the police arrive at her door. Not wanting to be seen with Rex, she encourages him to hide in the pantry after he tells her he just wants answers. And of course, that's what Anna wants too. Detective Lane shows and issues Anna with a restraining order. Following her breaking into Neil's house, Lane is quick to admit she's got off lightly. When they finally leave, Rex reveals more about what's happening. He believes Chastity has faked her own death. The reasoning? Well, it seems like it's a way of dissuading Rex from coming after her so she can keep all of Neil's money. The two of them are con artists, working together and playing the long game. Back then, Rex worked as a stripper at a strip club, while Chastity worked the bar. She convinced him to get involved in a long con, ripping off different men by convincing them that Rex is her brother and suffering from a rare blood condition, needing money for an experimental procedure. Her targets were all seized upon from the obituary section. And that's when she met Neil and Emma. Rex started to get cold feet about the whole ordeal, but because Rex's name is on all the bank accounts, getting out isn't so easy. Lisa knew this and was using him all this time. And just like that, Anna and Rex hook up. While they do, Carol winds up seeing them by the front door and gasps. As the episode comes to a close, we cut to the woods where it turns out Lisa is actually dead. Her face is uncovered and a dog begins howling. Episode 6 of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window starts with Anna waking up to find Rex downstairs cooking. Their morning is completely disrupted though by Detective Lane showing up and arresting Rex. He's taken away in handcuffs, charged with Chastity's murder. It turns out the Financial Crimes Unit have had Rex and Chastity under surveillance for a while, and when Lane and the others were given instructions to apprehend him, they jumped on the chance to do so. There's even audio footage of Rex telling Chastity that he's going to kill her. Lane also deduces that Rex had a burner he was using to give himself an alibi, hence the text messages. Lane encourages Anna to get her life in order and leaves. Anna decides to give up the drinking and sets to work turning her life around. After a mani-pedi with Sloane, she heads home where Buell gets a nail wedged through his hand. After bandaging up his hand, Buell admits that he has some tough stories about his mother and father, but that's a story for another day. Anna pays her respects to Elizabeth at the graveyard, where Neil and Emma show up. Although she drops off the casserole dish for her daughter, Anna changes her mind and gives it to Emma instead. As she walks away, the gravestone now reads "There's no eye in heaven." At the crime scene, Detective Lane and the others uncover a murder weapon, which completely changes the game. They missed it the first time around, but now this brings Lane and Officer Spitz over to Anna's to talk. With Anna present, Lane admits that they've released Rex, given he has a solid alibi for the time in question. He was actually over at a bar dancing. As for Anna though, they suspect she's the murderer. They found a palette knife not far from the body. Not only that, she also seems to have a painting for the perfect family, which includes her, Neil and Emma together. She doesn't remember painting this though, and begins to slip out of control. Something doesn't seem right, but for now, Anna is taken down to the station for questioning. Episode 7 of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window begins at the police station. With a coffee in hand, Anna is questioned. Threatening Carol is not a good look, nor is talking to Chastity the day before her murder. However, they're interrupted by a man arriving to take Anna's fingerprints, resulting in one of the funnier moments from this series. When the interview reconvenes, Anna discusses her past and how she used to paint dogs in masterpieces. Until she fell pregnant with Elizabeth, that is. For 3 full months while bedbound, Anna had a custom easel set up and painted until Elizabeth came, complete with a spattering of paint over her. As we know, Anna stopped painting when Elizabeth passed away. The prints come back and they're a match for the murder weapon. Unfortunately, Anna is arrested for Chastity's murder. In the morning she's let out on bail, thanks to Sloane covering for her though. She took a loan out against the gallery, but wants an explanation for exactly what's going on. Anna, however, doesn't have one. When Anna heads home, she's threatened by Neil to stay away from Emma before she hears creaking coming up upstairs. When she opens up the attic, a glop of red blood drops to the floor. Unsure where else to turn, Anna rings her therapist and admits that she thinks she's murdered Chastity. The thing is, this therapist she's talking to is actually Douglas. Douglas talks her through what to do and calmly encourages her to head up to the attic while she's on the phone to him. That blood she's seen dripping from her attic happens to be red paint. It also turns out she did stab Chastity that night, but only her painting, which Anna created while drunk that night. This would also explain the perfect family portrait too, which looks to be another drunken night of painting she's forgotten about. When Anna notices gloves over by the side of the attic, everything becomes clear. She suspects that Buell is the killer. He was the one who brought Anna in from the rain that night she collapsed, and he's been living up there all this time. This also helps to explain the creaking noises. When Douglas hired him to be their handyman, it turns out he was actually one of Delga's old clients. He helped rehabilitate Buell, who was released early from state hospital. Originally he had been found criminally insane. His charges? Only murdering his entire family with a claw hammer. After learning the truth, Douglas tells Anna to leave the house, fearing for her safety. As Anna looks out the window, panic grips her as she notices Buell walking purposefully toward Neil's house. He's holding a hammer. Is Buell the killer? Episode 8 of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window begins with Buell walking over to Neil's house. With rain lashing down outside, Anna courageously charges outside. She does her best to fight off her phobias, fighting and clawing across the floor to make it across the street. With the memory of Massacre Mike and Elizabeth echoing in her mind, Anna makes it to Neil's house. When she enters, she finds Buell passed out on the floor, with a slit throat. As Anna looks down on him, he croaks that he only went over to deliver the mail. He's not the real killer after all. As Anna suspects Neil next, she rushes into the living room to find his throat slit too. The one wielding the knife happens to be Emma. She's the one who killed Chastity. But why? Why did Emma kill Chastity? And what happened to her mum? Well, the night before Chastity left to go to the airport, Emma actually did stab her in the neck. Anna didn't imagine seeing that at all. Apparently all of this was off the back of Chastity refusing to buy her chocolate bars. Emma pinned the murder on Anna under the guise of selling chocolate at her house. While she was upstairs getting her checkbook, Emma snuck in and grabbed the palette knife. Neil was upstairs in the bathroom practicing his ventriloquist act when Emma killed Chastity, giving her the perfect opportunity to kill and cover the murder up. She also killed her own mum too, on account of her falling pregnant. It was Emma who pushed her teacher off the top of the lighthouse. And lastly, Emma was also the one to leave the warning on her car. A fight between the two inevitably breaks out, with Emma stabbing Anna and even shooting her in the shoulder with her dad's gun. To finish things off, Emma smashes the casserole dish over Anna's head. As Emma grabs a knife and prepares to end Anna forever, Douglas shows up just in time to see what's happening. Momentarily distracted, Anna kills Emma. Do Anna and Douglas get back together? Thanks to Douglas's testimony, Anna is let off the hook. Buell is also going to make it too as he's in intensive care, while Emma and Neil are both dead. After Douglas shows up, Carol does too. She apologizes to Anna for not believing her and drops off some flowers as a peace offering. When Anna is discharged from the hospital, she heads up to the loft where Buell happens to be doing taxidermy, with some hilarious books that match the titles we saw earlier in the series regarding painting. Speaking of which, Anna shows up at the gallery with her latest piece, after getting back in the saddle again, and painting after all. Douglas is there too with Claire, who happens to be a clinical psychologist he works with, not his lover. Douglas takes Anna aside and mentions how he's bought her painting. As it begins to rain, Anna realizes that she's not afraid anymore, and like any cliched romantic moment, they kiss in the rain. How does The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window end? We then jump forward 1 year. Douglas is back with Anna, and she's heading off on a weekend break with Sloane. She's also no longer drinking wine either, she's moved on to vodka. The thing is, she's still hallucinating, and this time it comes from seeing a woman in the seat next to her. As the flight takes off, Anna wakes up to find the passenger gone and brutally murdered in the bathroom. According to the flight attendant, there was never anyone next to her, and when Anna shows him the bathroom, it's completely empty. So did she imagine the whole thing? A gold makeup mirror on the seat next to her seems to prove otherwise. Bingo. Anna says, as the series comes to a close. The episode review. So the case is wrapped up with a neat little bow, as we learn that Buell wasn't the murderer after all, it was Emma. I must say, that was a lovely little twist, and certainly one I didn't see coming. Like many others, Buell seemed like the most likely suspect, but alas, he was just a red herring. However, the episode does well to keep things intriguing, and the ending definitely hints that there could potentially be a second season if this is well received from audiences. While the series could have done with perhaps 2 or 3 episodes less, there's enough here to enjoy nonetheless. Kristen Bell is great in this lead role too, and she definitely helps to carry the mystery through some of the slower segments. Either way though, the woman in the house across the street from the girl in the window wraps things up nicely.